to honor, celebrate the man, the work, and the way in which he related to each of us. He was a wonderful colleague, as I knew him, and a great scholar, and for many of us, a life changer. He was for me. He called up one night and asked me this very pointed question about a choice I had to make. He said, if you were still at Harvard, would you take this job now? And without even thinking, I went, no way. And he went, there you go. You know, it was wonderful. And he was a great and good man. And we have a program today, thanks to Adele, who, of course, lived a life with Bob, as well as a life without Bob, and went through and selected a variety of people to speak who were close to Bob in various ways and at various times. And Anne Laurie, who will speak first, organized them all. So what I want to, you have a program, all of you, it says who's going to speak. I know they will explain how they were with Bob and what Bob was like for them. So I'm not going to go through names and all. We will have remarks, we'll have a musical interlude, we'll have remarks, we'll have a musical interlude, Adele will close it, and then we will have a reception for which we hope you all will stay. And with that, Anne Laurie.
Thank you. When I worked at SDSU, I had them cut down a podium for me so I could see over it. That's the way it goes. I just look at this room and I feel the warmth and love that we all had for our dear colleague Bob. I surely miss him. He was a gift to all of us. Bob once described the absorbing errands, the passionate search for knowledge that some scholars have throughout their careers. He was, of course, describing himself in his own intellectual journey, and what a journey it was. Many years ago, as a skinny boy who walked along the bleak Jersey shore on winter days, Bob thought about becoming a clerk after high school. I wonder if then he could have ever imagined himself as a distinguished international scholar walking along the sunny beaches of Santa Monica, having received the highest honors in both his field, both at home and abroad. Little did this Jersey girl know, when I enrolled in Professor Clark's course in 1966, that my life was about to change. Bob's lectures revealed an exciting world of sociologists and organizations to me. I found myself actually attending class for the first time in my whole student career regularly. Bob ignited my intellectual dream. He and continued to influence the rest of my career. Thank goodness I sure could have used the help. For example, one day he casually mentioned the concept of loose-lying power in higher ed. And there it was, I thought, these little piles of power lying around, just waiting for someone to pick up. And when I was an administrator, I remembered that thought, as well as many of other Bob's thoughts and ideas. And they really helped me in my career. The best of me as an administrator was guided by Bob. I am sure that you all will agree that Bob set a standard for us that I, at least as a mere mortal and many others, could never meet. His inquiring and disciplined scholarship spans such a breadth of subjects, providing us a very, very rich lens in which to examine a broad breadth of higher education. I also remain absolutely dazzled by his use of language. He communicates complex thoughts simply, and yet his writing is so rich, often eloquent, even poetic, making full use of the power of language, something I could never do in my bland academic writing. Further, his gentleness, humor, positive outlook, and unassuming manner provides us with another model, another standard of a different sort. Many individuals think of Bob as a scholar who worked alone. In a way, he did not. How many times do we find ourselves engaged in a conversation with Bob, exploring different concepts and ideas, who later, fortified by large quantities of ice cream, would squirrel himself away and just kind of examine the aspect of our conversations with him, looking at it through his disciplinary lens. Then he would emerge, chatting on with us, sometimes, as some of us remember, for days, about a particular concept or idea, until it became forever part of his intellectual matrix, and eventually ours also. His closest collaborator was his muse, his editor, his love of his life, Adele. When I last visited Bob, he spoke of his profound sadness and anxiety about leaving her. I know that she has drawn comfort from their deep love for each other, and hopefully from the caring and dear friendship that those of us in this room and many others have to together. In closing, I just want to note that one time Patty and Gary and I had the stupid idea of giving Bob a retirement party at ARA. What were we thinking? He continued to write for decades later. Does he get up in the morning, ponder his notes, and say, oh, I'm just going to work on this last piece. This last piece. We can all attest that Bob had an academic passion that captivated, motivated, and exhausted him, gave him joy, and held together the fiber of his very being. We are all better for his extraordinary intellectual journey. And I, for one, miss and cherish him, and I will always carry him gratefully in my heart. All right, color will follow.
In preparation for this meeting, I thought I would pick up a copy of Bob's on higher education selective writings, 50 years of selective writings are in here, which he put together with the help of Adele. So I did that, and Adele, this is going to be familiar to you. Anybody who's traveled in Italy and has friends there and gets invited for dinner, as you have, I'm sure, and they say, come over at 8 o'clock, and sometime after midnight, you find that you keep looking at your watch. I think it's time to go. Even a lunch with some friends will run 4 to 5 hours. Well, I picked this up. I thought I'd go through and see if I could find some quotations that I could use. Well, 4 hours later, I was so fascinated by rereading. I read most of these, not all of them, these selections in here. I was so fascinated I couldn't put the book down. And that's what Bob, the effect that he has. He was never afraid of explaining the most polemical topics very clearly. Clear prose, easily read. You go through it, and you keep saying, what a mind he had. Always use the organization as the unit of analysis. He said, and I quote, be wary of the mean and other measures of central tendency that squeeze out the truth of diverse stories. And that's the way he always did it. He deplored using nationwide averages to explain anything. He says that to claim that the education system has put the nation at risk is to risk what individual colleges are doing with individual sets of students. The difference between types of colleges distort national meanings, and that theme runs through. He's using the organization is the unit of analysis. He says national reform groups make no serious effort to locate the problem. Bottom-feeding institutions that very democratically open their doors to poorly prepared students who missed having a decent secondary school education, all are part of a non-formal, madcap, and nebulous system of higher education. I first became acquainted with Bob's work through his piece, The Insulated Americans, 5 Lessons from Abroad. That caught my eye. It was in Change magazine in the 1970s, the late 70s. And what that piece was, I read it. I had no idea. That's my introduction to Bob Clark. And he said, in it, just as European higher education was attempting decentralization, the U.S. was seeking homogenization by applying the same standards and expectations across the board. So Europe was going one way, and the U.S. was going the other way. He said a central bureaucracy cannot effectively coordinate mass higher education. And it stifles institutional differentiation. He pointed out, very straight, nationalization of higher education has become a huge failure in Italy. Just write about that. One top-down, across the system, attempted reform after another has simply made matters worse. Well, I like that. And then, of course, we'll get a chance to bring him here as the first holder of the Alan Carter Chair. I was delighted, because to bring that, somebody would write like that, and to bring him in as a colleague was really a treat for us. Coming close to what the work that Florence and I did some 50 years ago, he described community college activities to redirect students who were in programs that were inappropriate for their abilities and goals, and they called it the cooling out function. Well, that term was just picked up in the literature. Everybody just thought the cooling out function. It was completely misinterpreted, because over and over you see, well, the cooling out function, that's community college ways to get rid of people who they feel are not qualified. When in fact, he said that somewhere along the way, many students must be redirected. You have 3 million students starting in first grade. You don't need 3 million PhDs 20 years later. Somewhere they're going to get off the track. And some institution has to be part of that redirection. He said the problem that causes colleges to respond with the cooling out effort, meaning redirecting, getting a different program, is not going to go away by moving it inside of other types of colleges. Somebody has to make that effort. Well, there it is. So when we talk about dropout, and we talk about the community college as such an evil institution, liberal is somewhere they've got to get off the track. Well, Florence and I followed on Bob's precepts when we questioned why the community colleges in one state or district operating under the same regulations had such disparate transfer rates transferring to the universities. I mean, you go to one district, you go to Contra Costa, there's the Admiral Valley and Los Medanos in the same district, 12 miles apart. One of them has a transfer rate of somewhere in the high 30s, 37, 38%, the other one 10 or 12%. So we went in there, what's happening? What does this institution look like? We went into pairs of colleges in Washington and New York and Illinois and other states. And it's in the culture of the institution. There's nothing, it's the image, the expectations, not only of the staff, but of high school counselors who send students to that college, of parents, of newspaper articles. It's all it's embedded in the culture of the institution, whether you're going to be a high transfer rate or low transfer rate. And nothing new, they all operate under the same rules. Anyway, he was very strong on writing about organizational culture, what he called organizational saga, which we now call branding. The institutions have cultures that way. And he applied case studies to verify his theories. And one part of that is college's effect on students should include questions of why certain students select certain institutions, because that's the beginning of the saga. And these public images are salient and they're enduring. Well, I'm going to close by saying that Bob's, I'll quote one more quotation from him. I have long maintained that authors are only responsible for the birth of their individual writings. Once out on the table for all to see, they have to take care of themselves. And there they are on the table for all to see, his writings taking care of themselves. Thank you.
Dean Dorr said that Bob was a life changer. And I think perhaps that's more true of me than anyone else in this room. I came to the Yale Comparative Higher Education Group in its second year. I have a PhD in French intellectual history, and I've been teaching European history. And suddenly I was embarking on the study of higher education. The first year of that group was rather disorganized, as I learned from legend. But the second year it became more organized, and we had a central seminar. And it really, for me, it amounted to virtually a second PhD. It was probably the third year of this study before I made a substantial contribution to higher education, which is what usually takes, that's about how long it takes our better PhD students in our program. But there were problems. There were no career lines for people getting moved to study comparative higher education in those days. Higher education programs were entirely focused on the United States, and that was about it. So what Bob set out to do was extremely difficult. He intended to create an intellectual community of people studying comparative higher education. He points out in his autobiographical article that he felt that he was substantially successful in doing so. And he certainly was. And it was due to his extraordinary entrepreneurship and his gift with funding agencies. But both of those things were really dependent on having more powerful ideas. It was his conception of higher education which ultimately gave him the resources that made the higher education group thrive for a time. Comparative higher education is an impossible topic. There's multiple systems that change rapidly over time. There was only one moment when I think we came close to mastering the subject. And that's when a number of us got together under the leadership of Bob and Eve to create the Pergamon Encyclopedia of Higher Education. Encyclopedias are not terribly popular items, but the 4 days we spent in Marbella, Spain, planning how we could describe and analyze all of the higher education systems in the world was an intellectual experience that I'll never forget. But most importantly, Bob created a fundamental theoretical structure for understanding, analyzing, making policy recommendations about higher education systems. I can almost hear him talk about the bottom-centered nature of higher education, because as he put it in the higher education system, higher education ultimately rested upon knowledge. And knowledge, the chapter on knowledge was the first chapter in the higher education system. I was surprised looking at that book again that was published in 1983. Has this view of higher education influenced me? Well, my books on American universities are entitled To Advance Knowledge, Research and Relevant Knowledge, and Knowledge and Money. And I'm currently writing a history of American higher education, in which the growth of knowledge will play a central role in the shaping of the system. In Bob's autobiographical piece, he makes it sound like the decision to leave Yale and come to UCLA was a close thing. But it was a very good decision. The Yale group was unsustainable as this kind of a research institute inevitably is. And at UCLA, he had the resources to make the intellectual community truly international. And I was involved with him in a number of previous efforts to this effect. For a few years, the Lancaster conferences sort of served that function. And then Eskil Bjorklund in Sweden managed a number of conferences that brought people together. There was something called the International Conference on the Future of the University, which Bob wasn't too involved with. But the group which ultimately succeeded in doing this is, of course, the Consortium of Higher Education Researchers, which was really formed by the people that Bob brought together into a community. And last September in Porto, Portugal, I was there when the share meeting passed a resolution of appreciation for Burton R, and it was certainly completely felt and completely appropriate. I know I'll miss Bob's company, but he'll always be with me.
Well, I chose to share with you a poem written by our son John. As I reflected on Bob, his life, his many accomplishments, but most of all his friendship, I wanted to take this moment, this being together, all of us, in celebration of Bob's life, a life well lived. The poem is entitled Pure, Clear, and Ungraspable. Tell me, what is this thing we call the moment at hand? That's slipping through your fingers like so many grains of sand. Like a line drawn in the water, or the flight path of a bird. This that is appearing is disappearing. Like everything, it is pure, clear, ungraspable. This here and now, pure, clear, ungraspable. It's what you are. Where are all these thoughts and feelings that swirl in your head? Can you show them to me? No. For they have already fled. So many names we give them, it's momentary thing. So much effort to define and understand until it's seen. But it's pure, clear, ungraspable. Nothing to find, nothing that binds, pure, clear, ungraspable. Made of life. Now you can relax your mind and rest with what unfolds, knowing there is nothing that you can ever hold, for everything is pure, clear, and ungraspable. Bob, I will remember him not only as a scholar, as a brilliant mind, creative, prolific, but as a very joyful and playful person. He had a gleam in his eye, and I always enjoy running into him in the faculty center with his bottle of ice cream and his dessert. He loved it. And I love that he could smile and greeting us whenever he saw us. Bob, you will be with us forever. Thank you for letting us know you, and thank you, Dad.
I'm deeply honored that Adele has asked me to participate in this Burton Clark Memorial. I am in fact the only speaker whose academic work is not in the area of higher education research, and so I know much less about Bob than most or many of you. Thus, I am here perhaps to present an outsider's, a department perspective on Bob Clark. Bob was a wonderful colleague, one who I found to be personable, patient, insightful, and understanding. I enjoyed and benefited from the many conversations we had, many of them in the hallway, where he was patiently willing to listen to me, and obviously providing me with insights about all things higher education. And the breadth of his knowledge was just gleamed. He also seemed willing to engage with me and to patiently explain concepts that were outside of my area of expertise. And moreover, he was ready to bear with me as I talked about my activities, which is no small thing. I particularly enjoyed and recall our various conversations that we had about shared experiences related to participating in the creation of encyclopedias. My wife, Marilyn, and I have had numerous get-togethers with Bob and Adele, and we look forward to continuing to do so with them.